Hello and good morning. It is 11:30, technically still morning, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're talking about sustainment training. Many of you here today are looking to ensure that your server is running smooth and will continue to do so far into the future. It's an excellent goal, but we're going to do one better. Armed with the information in this presentation, not only will you be able to evaluate and solve the issues that arise from a long-running server, but thanks to optimization and automation, your server will be able to run better than the day you installed it. So this is our agenda for today. Slides primarily here to let you know you're in the right place, and you can politely dismiss yourself if you're not. I'm not going to read everything in this slide because it'd be terribly boring, but I'm going to give you a moment to absorb the general concepts and talk you through the broad strokes. So we're starting with server terminology, which is just making sure we all have the same words for the same things. You'd be surprised how much a simple misunderstanding can cause such large problems. Once we're on the same page, we're going to look at how we evaluate our server. And this is how we find any potential issues that we're going to be looking to correct, which is our next section, fixing those problems. Once everything is working smooth, we're going to finalize with optimizing the server, which is a little time saving. And finally, we're going to look into updating the server. This is the way in which we get our server up to the newest version and why. So without any further ado, let's dive into that terminology. I'm only looking at a few terms here today because this is a bit of a broad overview. The Alertus server is going to be the machine physically running the Alertus server software. The Alertus server software then is the software running on the server. It's interacted with through two channels. The web console, which is the interface we use, technically it's going through Apache, and then the integration, which is the way that the Alertus server software interacts with other software and hardware. Usually that's going through Tomcat instead. So if we were to look at it as sort of a big picture, we have the Alertus server as this machine, and on it is the Alertus server software. That Alertus server software is communicating out with humans via the web console and via other hardware and software via integrations. All right, now that we're done on basics, let's go ahead and take a look at how we investigate and evaluate. We're going to be focusing on 5 main concepts. First, knowing what our features are and how to find them. Next, user security, making sure that the people who are accessing the server via the web console have the permissions that make sense for them. Then device communication, which is the devices checking into the server regularly via, as we saw before, their integrations. And device grouping, which is how those devices are put into groups when they communicate. This is used for targeting to make sure all their alerts hit the right people. And finally, performance, which is just making sure that everything's running smooth. All right. So to figure out what features we have, we go to the support page. You can find this in the bottom left corner of the interface on your Alertus web console, and pulling up the support page will show you all of the enabled features. This also shows you support resources as well in the first tab, so you can figure out where to contact technical support. They're great people. I recommend talk to them if you want some help on your system that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. And more importantly, making sure that you have all of the features you need. And if you have any features that you have and don't understand, again, you can give these fine folks a call, and they'll go ahead and let you know how they work. All right, now let's go to the actual issues we'd want to investigate. So first things up is user and access rights. By default, when you get the Alertus server, you're going to have 3 preset roles, which is to say a role for a preset only user, a role for a standard user or dispatch user, and a role for an administrator, which could also be a super user. Preset users are the simplest and easiest role to understand. They can only send activations. They do not have the authority to cancel activations, but they can also view reports to make sure that the activations went out properly. Standard users have a little bit more flexibility. Rather than only preset activations, they're also able to customize activations and could send a rapid activation if you have it enabled. They too can view reports, and importantly, they can cancel alerts and view dashboards such as the event dashboard. This is critical when you come to setting up custom event triggers and making sure everything's going through all right. And the highest level is an administrator, which has access to everything but and including the kitchen sink. So the reason we're going over this information is when you are looking at your system, you would want to know if the user level and access rights make sense to your user setup. Is your preset user who only sends out preset alerts given admin rights and the ability to break things that you may not want them touching? Well, if so, it might be a good idea to restrict their access. All right, next slide we're looking at is for the devices checking in. So this illustrates all the devices the server communicates with. Let's see, we've got them listed out right here: alert beacons, desktop, digital display overrides, HPSA, and text-to-speech, as well as the mobile membership report. These are two separate ones: device status, mobile membership, that provides some information. Device status report lists all native hardware and software that's in communication with the Alertus server. For purposes today, we only really need to worry about if any of them are showing up in red. These are devices that have not checked in for a long time. If this is the case, we're going to want to make a note of this. And when we go to error solutions to these problems, we'll be talking about how to specifically deal with devices that have not been or are not checking in. Now, this only includes the endpoints that are in active communication as listed up here. If you have something like a CAP or an RSS feed set up, you're not having a constant heartbeat check, so it will not display here. Likewise, mobile membership shows your mobile devices. We don't get a heartbeat check for this either, because that would cost mobile data for being able to push back and forth. So instead, we only look up when email is registered and when it is installed. Any device changes for mobile, such as moving from one group to another, will also be logged as a change, and you'll be able to see if that has occurred recently too. But for error purposes, we just want to make sure that in our device status report, we see all the devices we're expecting and none of them are red. And for the mobile membership report, we want to make sure that we see all the people that we're expecting for email and device installations in the proper groups. And note if there's anyone there who we need to bother to register or would like to remove. Next, we're looking at devices by group. So this is group membership report. The device checks in and you want to know, is it being clustered into the correct set of devices so it's easy to target? We have 3 views that make this easy to discern. You can see that they are available in this little blue box at the top. We'll each use which view you see. By default, you have groups as your grouping mechanism. So you click on a group and it displays all of the devices that are a part of that group. However, we can also see unassigned alert devices with this one. View devices not assigned to any group. This view will display which devices have not been assigned. Now, if you are seeing devices here that you expect to be in a group, you can make a note of that. And likewise, if when you're looking through groups, you see devices there that don't belong, make a note of that as well. And finally, for troubleshooting specific devices, you can see group memberships displayed by alert device. This is sort of like a pivot table of what's happening here. So we can see we've got some really weird names on these devices, but I promise they're devices, and which groups they are a member of. So whereas on the initial view, we see the group and then we see the devices that are assigned. In this view, we see the individual devices, and we see which, if any, groups they are assigned to. This one, for instance, has no groups. This one is assigned to 3. So if we have devices that are in more groups than we expect, this is where we would note that here as well. And last but not least, we're going to take a cursory glance of the server for performance issues. That would involve RDPing or VNCing in, and just running up Task Manager. Now, we'd look at its memory usage, its CPU, just take a look at these general metrics, make sure that nothing looks terribly awful. And if you are not in the position to RDP or VNC into your server, if you just have a quick chat with your network guy and ask for this basic information, a screenshot of this slide, for instance, would suffice to show them what level of detail you're looking at, just memory usage, resources, and the disk space to make sure everything's running smoothly. But truthfully, if you're not having hangups throughout the server and its usage, you probably don't have to worry about this. This is just us being safe. All right. So we've now familiarized ourselves with all of the sorts of issues that could occur: security issues for people's roles, device issues for devices not checking in, grouping issues for devices not being in the proper groups, and performance issues for the server not responding fast enough. Let's go ahead and look at the solutions for those issues. Okay. For security issues, the scope is pretty limited. Each user of the Alertus server has a few criteria. Username and password are set by an admin, the user themselves, or pass in through LDAP Active Directory. Email is used for password recovery, but what we're concerned with is the role and restriction. Now, role, we had the three standard roles that come with the server: preset, standard user, and admin, but those can be customized, and you can create new roles with custom designs of your own. These refer to what sorts of pages that they have access to. For instance, you might be able to say they can send some types of alerts, whether it be preset or custom, or if they have the ability to cancel them. For reports or dashboards, you could also decide which of those reports or dashboards they have access to. For configuration pages, you have even more granularity. For each page on system configuration, you can define if they can view them, if they can edit existing entries, create new entries, or delete, and any combination therein. So if you want someone to only be able to create new entries in view, but not edit or delete, that is acceptable. And last but not least is access rights. So each user, remember, can have both a role and a restriction. Restrictions for access rights here are targeting specific sets of data within these pages. So for instance, you can give someone access to configure, or let me rephrase, you can give someone access to view reports, but only show them particular units or groups. Likewise, for alerts, you could say you can send custom alerts, but only these groups will show up when you type in which groups you're trying to target. Or you can send preset alerts, but only the ones for your given district. Because you can assign access rights to individual users, you could, for instance, say North Campus only receives the capabilities for sending out North Campus preset alerts, whereas South Campus can only see South Campus preset alerts via access rights, despite both having a role that allows them to send out preset alerts. It's a little confusing, but once you get into there, it makes a lot more sense. You just decide which pages they can see, and then if you want to add additional restrictions on what data within it, you do that over there in access rights, which is the restriction. All right, so when we're making a plan to resolve this particular issue of unrestricted access, the most important parts by far are messaging and comprehensive testing. Remember, this is a mass notification system, generally for emergencies. Good security reduces the potential harm done by bad actors and targeting mistakes. Anytime we reduce the scope of users, we also want to make sure they're still able to message out for emergencies to those they need to reach. Likewise, before emailing tech support to remove mobile users, please verify that a user is completely separated from your organization rather than working in a new capacity, like a private contractor who still operates on site. So that is a bit. If you have users on your mobile that you want to have removed, you do just go ahead and email tech support. All right, moving on to device check-in issues. These can require a little bit more legwork. For Alertus desktop clients, there's an option in Alertus middleware for automatically deleting devices that do not check in within a given time frame. The default value is to remove devices that have not checked in 30 days, but this value can be changed. This will solve the vast majority of device check-in issues, but does not resolve the next issue, which is physical investigation. So for Alertus desktops, we just make sure that we're deleting inactive devices by checking this box. You can evaluate the criteria to be different than every 3 a.m. checking devices that haven't come in 30 days, but it's generally a safe one to use. If it is not an Alertus desktop device, you're going to want to do physical investigation. This is where you take a look at the description of the device so that you have an idea as to where it's located, find where it is physically located, and just make sure it is plugged in and on the network. If it is plugged in and responding to network, then you're going to have to check with tech support, and they'll be able to take it from there. But 99 times out of 100, someone has just pulled a cord or accidentally turned off power, or breaker box. You know how it is. So these two settings will fix nearly all of your problems that you've found via device check-ins. And if not, go ahead and give tech support a ring. All right, just like with their security issues, the next steps are to make a plan to resolve this. Alertus technical support is available for troubleshooting your issues, but here are the steps that most frequently resolve the issue and the method for performing them. First, you got to find the records of where these devices live if you've got devices that you need to find. You have to see who's able to physically visit those locations. If there's any sort of an access control system or security involved for getting into it, you have to know. And you need that person to also be able to have the technical proficiency to confirm that power network is functioning there. So to do this, you want to make sure that you have a time frame where you're not going to be disrupting the standard operating of your organization. If you have a tech guy busting into a classroom and tinkering with the tech on the wall, that might be a little bit disruptive to the teaching that's ongoing. So like with all of these, you want to make sure you communicate in organization about what you're trying to accomplish and find a way to do it non-disruptively. After you've confirmed the functionality of the devices, a simple test is the best way to make sure that they are working properly. Just find a time outside of operating hours, and you can check your device status reports and your activation reports to confirm that everything has worked properly. All right, moving right along. We're now going to be looking at grouping issues. If you found an issue in grouping, the chances are that device assignment rules are the cause. In nearly all cases, groups are assigned by either name or IP, which is to say IP address. If the device is assigned by name, the name will usually be determined by parameters in the device's configuration file. For example, we're here looking at an Alertus desktop. The contents of the device name are evaluated by regular expression, which you might hear abbreviated to regex rules. Any device that matches the criteria will be assigned to the group associated with the rule. So here we can see it is AD, which means Alertus desktop, device's self-reported name, and then the time of first checking in. You can see here that we can have a regular expression, which would be a series of characters here that correspond to evaluating the device. In this case, we're using the rule starts with AD, which would mean any device that's first two characters are AD would evaluate into this device assignment rule. How device assignment rules work is if they meet the criteria, you go to a given group. So in this device assignment rule, you would say if it has this example rule, regular expression AD, then go to group Alertus desktop, and it would be assigned to that group. You can also do this by IP range. So you can see, you can do a simple builder version here. You can say starting address and ending, or if you want to give CIDR ranges instead, you can do that. But most rational people tend to prefer the simplicity of using start and end IP addresses. If you're feeling particularly sassy, you can even do IP address by regular expression as displayed here. So all of this is to say, if you have devices that are in groups they shouldn't be, or are not in groups that they should be in, you should take a look at your device assignment rules. See what the criteria are for putting devices into groups, and see if you can figure out why your device doesn't meet those criteria. Is it outside of the range? Does an exception need to be made, either excluding one IP address by starting and ending, and then starting and ending again here? For instance, you have one device on the same subnet that is statically assigned and always used for a particular purpose outside of the Alertus desktops. You might need to create 2 IP address ranges. Or if you have an unusual convention for your naming, you might need to include perhaps a second rule for naming conventions that allow both styles of name to go into the same group. And if you have a more generic one, like starts with AD, you might see that significantly more groups than you intended, or excuse me, significantly more units than you intended are being put into that group. So just an evaluation of these device assignment rules will make sure everything is where it belongs. So how to go about fixing it? So the first step is to coordinate with your IT team and deduce the network changes or device naming conventions that cause these issues to arise in the first place. The assumption here is that when everything was set up initially, it was working correctly, and then over time, network changes and standard practices for how you name computers has changed with the growth of your organization. Now it's just a matter of reevaluating your existing rules and updating them to meet the current practices of your organization. So to do that, talk to IT. Just request a list of these changes. What is the new naming conventions? What are the new network maps and IP ranges? Just get the inside scoop and then reflect those changes in your rules. Mazel tov, all done. Once you have these changes applied, just open up your group membership reports and you can confirm that your devices are now in the places they belong. The final issue that we're going to look at resolving is a performance issue. Now, truthfully, the tools on the Alertus server aren't terribly expansive because this is usually a hardware issue. That said, we do have a few tools that we can utilize. In the Alertus middleware settings page, we can use the disk cleanup job, which deletes old logs and old backups, or the data cleanup job, which deletes old alerts and old events. These are useful if your hard drive, the space that is designated for Alertus server to run, is getting a little bit cramped. It won't fix your RAM or your latency to the server or any other issue, but if the problem is not having enough physical memory space, this will help. So for storage issues, we can automate it right here with the Alertus server software and middleware. But for memory or CPU uses, you're going to have to reach out to your internal IT team and figure out if you can find a solution by allocating more resources. Steps here again, just either enable the maintenance job or reach out. And you can verify the changes the same way we verified the issue. Simple RDP or VNC to the Alertus server. Just check to make sure everything's running smooth. All right. So we have looked at what could be misbehaving and then found ways to fix those problems. Now let's take a look at optimizing Air Server so that will run smoother in the future. First bit of optimization comes by customizing user interfaces. Organizing preset alerts with visually distinct tiles makes them easier to find and to send in an emergency. Each user can have their own set of alerts appear on their preset page to ensure that they have immediate access for their most immediate issues. Let's take a look at how this is accomplished. So visually distinct appearances for alerts are called preset types. You can see them right here on the user interface. These are our preset types. They are created on the Configure Preset Alert page. So this is the very bottom of that page. Once created, they can be assigned to preset alerts. This is done by assigning them to the preset type at the Edit Preset Alert page. Here's how those preset types are edited. So if you click on one of those or create a new one, you can see you can change the border color, the text color, the icon color. You can also select from a rather extensive list of icons. If you want, you can also change the way the text is styled. And here at the top of creating a new preset alert, in the very first set, where you do the name and description, you can now also choose how it displays. This first section heading in preset alerts is all about how an alert displays in the interface. It does not affect its functionality once it is sent. So you can go ahead and make the preview look however it is most appropriate for your organization. The end users that these are sent to will not see your styling. Okay, next up is server messaging about notification and monitoring. This is found in the Alertus middleware settings. These settings, you can customize the conditions under which the Alertus server software will automatically email you. This can range from a daily check-in that summarizes the server activity, or be as granular as sending an email for every dedicated issue and every time the alert is sent. Once you have configured the criteria for automated notification, you can confirm that emails are sent and received properly. So when you go to the Alertus middleware setting page, you'll see on the far left this navigation pane, and under notifications and monitoring, we can decide who gets emailed, criteria for emailing about any issues with alert beacons. Daily digest is that daily summary of system activity. You can also determine if emails are sent whenever an alert is sent as well. Sometimes it's good to be known when the system is used. And also the ability to archive data so that you can use it for monitoring your system over an extended period of time. Now this is configured in the system emailer, which is on the Alertus server on this property file. See Alertus configure Alertus middleware impl.properties, well, conf rather than configure. And we can test it in the Alertus server software. The tool is an Alertus middleware, then test email configuration. Now yours should look very similar to mine here with a few exceptions. Now you'll probably be using an SMTP host with an SMTP port, probably 25, and authenticating it, but you will likely have credentials that are valid for your organization and have an address to send them from. If you use an SSL certificate, you can enable that as well. The idea is that on this configuration file, you set this up so you can log in as a user on your domain and then test to make sure it is functioning. Like all other configuration file changes, however, you do need to restart services, take your server down for about 5 minutes. By going to Start menu, Restart, just running that app. This is the test email configuration that you can see under Alertus middleware. You type in who you want to email, and you can make sure that your system emailer, which is the one we just configured, and notification emailer, which is what's used for sending out alerts with the email type, will also work. Now, another neat feature that I like to extol virtues of is the scheduled alerts features. Allows you to automate system testing to run outside of standard operating hours. These tests can be scheduled by day, week, month, or even year. Once you've scheduled alerts, this page will display when the next upcoming scheduled alerts will be. After running these tests, you can review the results in the device activation report page to review the activation times of each device and make sure they were all sent acceptable time frames and with acceptable results. If any devices experience communication issues, you would see it there. So here we can see a scheduled alert to be sent every 6 weeks at a given point in time. And here are the expected times for that. All right. The last optimization is the creation of automated backups of the database on the Alertus server. All Alertus servers are equipped with a backup and restore utility that can be run manually or through your system task scheduler. Alertus recommends scheduling a reoccurring monthly backup. This can be formed by starting task scheduler. Just type task schedule into your start bar and select the application. Then creating a new task that will trigger once a month, as seen in this image, and executes the action of starting the Alertus backup and restore tool. In this case, we're using the backup argument because we are backing up the server. So under the task scheduler app, here we can see we've done new trigger with a given schedule of monthly. Of course, you can customize this however you would like. And it is enabled. It is running this program, C Alertus Utilities, EAS Backup, Restore Frontend.exe. It's the full name of the program, and it's running the argument backup. You can see that right here in the action that is being run. Run this script with this argument. All right, we are nearly there. And last section is updating the server, why we do it, the procedure, and a release schedule. The Alertus server software is constantly evolving with new features and new integrations. Each update is filled with additions that expand the service capabilities. Additionally, development time is spent addressing user feedback on any suggestions to the current features to make them more streamlined and user-friendly. Perhaps most importantly, though, our updates also include the latest libraries and system architecture to continue to ensure you have the most up-to-date security on your server. This is used to solve vulnerability and exploits by releasing patches as soon as they are detected. And library updates, of course, just keep us up to the highest standard level of security for all of the server stacks we're using. Things like Apache, Tomcat, MySQL. They get new libraries over time, and we want to make sure we are current. So update procedure is pretty straightforward. Before we get started, a recommendation is to send out a message notifying your organization that the Alertus server will have about an hour of scheduled downtime. Then you RDP into the server and run the backup and restore utility. You just go to the start bar and type backup, and this friendly little interface will come up here. Create a backup. Then you download and run the latest server version. Installer window would ask you to press next a few times to guide you through completion. This process will take about a half hour with some variability based on the hardware of your server. Downloads are hosted at help.alertus.com. Once the server has been updated, go ahead and log into the web console, which remember is how humans interact with the Alertus server by typing in the host name, something like yourorganization.alertus.com, and confirm that there are no errors. Once server functionality has been confirmed, we'll RDP right back in, create a new manual update of the updated state. So we'll just run this backup and restore tool again. So we have a pre-installation and post-installation before any other changes are done, backups. And then finally, email your organization to notify them that the server maintenance is complete and that the system is back online. Here we can see the server setup wizard. It is literally just clicking next to those boxes. All right. So when do we update then? Each year we have 2 large scheduled updates, one in the summer and one in the winter. We notify via email. In general, you're not going to miss these. They're sent to primary and technical contacts unless otherwise requested. Hotfixes, however, do not have a set schedule. As soon as we are made aware of an issue, fixing is their top priority. The most common reason for a hotfix is an issue with an underlying resource library. For this, we notify customers via email, and we send out whatever fixes or patches are necessary so that they know that any sort of vulnerabilities like Heartbeat or Log4j can be resolved ASAP. And last but not least are patches. These are released periodically and generally are not messaged until the next big scheduled biannual update. And these tend to include either small bug fixes or specific features that are being developed for a specific client, and then will be released for general consumption at the biannual updates. All right. I'm sure you have all enjoyed this training so much that you want to see several more. So for Alertus training, we do offer several options. If you want to see more trainings like this one, we are wrapping up. I promise. We have Emergency Manager, New User, and System Config. Emergency Manager is for someone responsible for training others, and it focuses on how everything works, how you activate, and how to set up the user roles for the people that you'd be training. Likewise, we can also directly facilitate new user training for anyone who needs to use the Alertus console, its activation methods, or maybe even navigate through a little bit of tech support documentation via a portal. And finally, there is system configuration. This is for your admins and IT personnel. This is where you can go into a deep dive on any crunchy topics that you need and cover everything related to the activation, analysis, troubleshooting, really all the nuts and bolts. I personally love giving this one. There is a schedule available on our website that will help you deduce when these are coming up, and you will additionally get emails about them if you are a listed customer, so you can hear their availability. These take the form of webinars, not unlike this one here. All right, so this is everything we covered today. Hope we can help jog your memories for any questions you had throughout the talk. This is our Q&A slide, so by all means, if you have questions, I have answers. This could be on the initial evaluation, cleaning things up, optimizing, or updating. This gives me a second to sip some tea and see if anyone has any questions to type out. No one be shy here. All right, looks like the general consensus is that we have everything we need. Keep the server functioning and working properly. One last quick wait. Any contradictions? Anyone good? Any questions? All right, looks like we are good. So I am Brian, and this has been our system training. I hope you all had as wonderful of a time as I did, and I hope to see you in future trainings.